thank you so much for taking the time out of your very busy schedules to join us for this webinar on fighting summer slide. So generally, when we say summer slide, we're metaphorically referring to students losing skills, right? We're referring to learning gains that slide away when kids aren't in school. And current research, given school closures, is that kids could lose up to a semester's worth of learning. In preparing for this webinar, however, I found myself also thinking about literal slides, playground slides, and the ongoing argument that my husband and I used to have about them. So as a first-time mother, I did everything in my power to keep our first child from going down the slide. Like every time she made a move for that slide, I'd be like, look, honey, a red ball. Or I'd say something like, time for ice cream. I'd actually sit at the top of the entrance to the slide and be like, what slide? I don't see a slide. And when she'd get really insistent, I'd set her down on like that final 4 inches of the slide and let her take one scoot forward and be like, wow, you did it. You went down the slide. And she'd look at me like, really? Well, that was underwhelming. And then my husband would come to the playground and he'd take her to the top of the slide and he would just let her go and she would be totally fine. And he was all like, see, honey, you worry too much. You just need to let her have her experiences. And I would be incensed, but in the end, he won that battle. He was right. I should be letting her go down that playground slide. But you know what? Turns out that my anti-slide stance is exactly the route to go when we're talking about the summer learning slide. And all those protective measures, all those impulses to shield children are exactly what we need. So after all these years, I get to be right too. Yes, there is a summer learning slide, and yes, it has the potential to be a whole lot worse this year, but we are going to do everything we can to keep kids from experiencing it. We're going to block the entrance to the slide. We are going to hold our students at the top and keep them from sliding down at all. And I know you agree with me on this. It's why you're all here today. On this webinar, we'll explore practical, easy to implement solutions you can use to fight summer learning loss and keep kids and families learning when the school year ends. So you'll come away with ways to help families leverage teachable moments, insights into defining your goals for summer learning, a system for finding just right moments that map onto your learning goals, 3 motivational strategies for driving action and participation when it comes to at-home learning, and frameworks for presenting summer learning as an exciting adventure to inspire action. If you are a note taker like myself, you can feel free to just sit back and listen. We'll be posting this webinar on our feeds, so if you follow us, you'll get all of those updates. So I'm Rebecca Honig. I'm the Director of Content and Curriculum for Ready for K. In my role, I build our curriculums at each age level and write our messages along with an amazing team. Before joining Ready for K, I spent a decade as a curriculum specialist and then a writer for Sesame Street, creating parent guides, teacher books, and scripts. I've written for Emmy Award-winning shows on PBS, served as an ed consultant for Disney and Nickelodeon and Mo Willems, and created teacher and family resources for Scholastic, HITN, Compass Learning, WGBH, and many others. I also spent 10 years teaching and now have my own 3 young children who really keep me in check. I'm joined by my amazing colleague, Fran. She's our Chief Content Specialist and Content Manager. And prior to joining Ready for K, Fran spent over a decade working in the public and private sector as an educator, curriculum development consultant, and education official. She also has 3 children who keep her in check and inspire her work. Fran will introduce herself more fully later when she chimes in, and I'm really excited for you all to hear from her. So a question you might be asking, why is Ready for K hosting this webinar? Well, because Ready for K exists to engage parents in their children's learning through simple tips and activities that are easy to do. Every day, our job is to translate everyday moments into teachable moments. Ready for K is an evidence-based family engagement program that's delivered to parents via text messages. It starts at birth and it continues through 4th grade so that parents receive messages that address learning at each stage of development. So we have 3 curriculums that our partners choose from. Ready for K Core, which messages families on skills and topics related to math, literacy, social and emotional skills, health and safety. Ready for K Trauma Informed, which was created to help parents buffer the effects of trauma. And it's aligned with the protective factors framework and addresses parental resilience, knowledge of parenting and child development, social connections, the emotional competence of children, and concrete resources in times of need. With this program, we also send messages connecting families with their critical local resources like food assistance and mental health services. And finally, we have Ready for K Personalized Learning. And in this program, we personalize the program based on a child's ages and stages screener results so that each family receives a program customized to their child's unique developmental needs. In all of our Ready for K programs, we use the same highly specific formula for reaching and engaging families. And I'll quickly walk you through it. On Mondays, we send a fact message with information on a specific skill and why it's important to their child's development. So the purpose of this message is to close information gaps and orient families around learning and development. For example, fact, you can add to your child's summer learning by playing with numbers. Giving your child lots of fun chances to add builds math skills. Then on Wednesday, we send tip messages with an activity mapped right onto a daily routine that builds the skill of the week. And our tip messages activate families by offering one easy thing they can do to support their child's learning. So tip, while getting ready, ask your child to count how long it takes to put on one shoe, the other shoe. Together, add the 2 numbers to get the total. And on Friday, we send a growth message. And the growth messages offer an additional everyday activity that takes the skill of the week a little bit further. So for example, growth, keep adding. Ask your child to count the pieces of clothing they're wearing. Count how many you're wearing. Together, add the numbers. And this approach of mapping learning onto everyday moments and texting about them works. 94% of parents report doing a Ready for K activity at least once a week with their child. And the Ready for K approach is proven through numerous RTC studies to increase parental engagement, and it leads to up to 2 to 3 months of child learning gains. So as the people who design the curriculum and write the messages every day, Fran and I work to look at education through a parenting lens, choosing skills and activities that are equitable, empowering, and just right for parents to deliver within their daily lives. This is something you're all having to do right now. And we're going to share our process with you so that you can use it in your work to support the families you serve over the summer and then beyond. So let's get started. Like with any learning experience, the first thing you'll do is choose the learning goals or core skills that you want families to focus on over the summer. Now, if you are a Head Start teacher, you are likely addressing 59 learning goals over the course of the year, and that's not including your family engagement goals. If you're a first grade teacher following Common Core standards, you're covering 67 learning standards, and that's just in ELA and math. Add SEL, 21st century skills, science and social studies onto that, and you're inching towards 100 standards. You are rock stars. We cannot, under any circumstances, ask that of parents, especially over the summer, especially now. What we hear from parents right now is that they are overloaded and overwhelmed, and they are fearfully anticipating a summer with little access to summer programs and childcare assistance, and that's on top of their pre-existing stressors. So, our first tip in supporting home learning during this summer is to be judicious. Less is more. Go for big wins, like cross-cutting skills and strategies you absolutely need kids to maintain. So in our summer content, we focus on the following core skills: reading comprehension, and in the older years, fluency, expressive and receptive language, number sense, and in the older years, everyday addition and subtraction, expressing emotions, problem solving, and executive function. So start by asking yourself, what are the 5 to 7 skills I absolutely want kids practicing and maintaining over the summer? We know from research that the skills most in jeopardy lie in reading and math. So you might want to start there. What are the reading skills that are most important for your families to practice? Do you want kids to maintain their reading fluency and stamina? Do you want them practicing their math fast facts or all the ways to make 10? We also know from research that when kids start the year able to self-regulate, focus, and problem solve, they are far better able to learn. So you'll also want to give families some core social and emotional skills and strategies to use with kids over the summer too. Like, what's a calm down strategy you want families to try? What's one thing families can do to help kids become more independent during those summer months? These are skills that will also help the whole family to navigate the challenges they face. So we surveyed thousands of parents to find out what skills and what activities are most helpful to them. And during these challenging times, they are mentioning social and emotional skills more than ever. We hear things like, the most helpful Ready for K activity during COVID-19 has been just breathing. So much of the day is work and trying to complete a task. It feels good to stop and take a deep breath. It focuses us and helps me realize that this too shall pass. Now in our work, after we identify skills or learning goals, we take an additional step, and that's vetting each skill against another core question. Is this a skill that a parent is well positioned to enforce at home? This question may lead you to adjust your skills, because when you ask a parent to engage in an at-home learning activity, you want them to read about the skill and the suggested activity and think, I can do that. Not, what? Or not like, I need to go back and brush up on middle school algebra before I can do that. And you certainly don't want them thinking, I can't do that. In our work, we take a strength-based approach with everything we ask families to do. We want parents leveraging skills that they have and building off of their unique relationship with their child. And sometimes that means that there are skills we just don't ask families to do at home. Here's a great way to check if it's not an easy learning goal for a family. See if you can explain it in 160 characters. So that's the length of the text messages we send to families. In 160 characters, you can very concisely introduce a skill or learning goal and say why it's important, right? For example, rhyming leads to reading. When kids rhyme, bat, sat, cat, they learn that words can share common endings. This helps them sound out words and spell words too. So if you're presenting a learning goal or skill to a family and you are finding that it's taking a whole backstory, a whole long, high-level explanation, consider looking for a different skill or a different point of entry to a skill. You want parents reading your suggested learning activities and thinking, oh, that's easy, I can do that. Which brings us to our next tip. Once you have the skills you want families to focus on, you're going to want to suggest easy to do activities that build these skills. So, when does an activity become easy to do? Well, when it does not require any materials, when it does not require any setup, when it leverages a parent's strengths, and when it's mapped right onto something parents are already doing. And this last point is key. Activities become easy and doable when they are mapped onto your daily moments and routines. Another thing happens when you map learning onto daily moments and routines. You make them repeatable. If you tell me to rhyme with my everyday activities, like rhyming with the word flip as I flip the switch at bedtime, that's something I'm going to do again and again, because it's something I do over and over each day. If you ask me to tell my child one way they make me feel proud as they lay their head down at night, that's something that I can make a routine. It can become my new habit, and that is what you want. You want families reading every day with their kids over the summer as a habit, because learning habits are what lead kids to hang on to all the skills you taught over the year. Additionally, what we found in our research is that when you frame learning around daily moments, families start seeing their day differently. They start seeing that their routines are full of opportunities for learning. And they start noticing new learning opportunities, things that you did not even mention, which is so exciting. We evaluate our program through parent surveys multiple times a year and get thousands of testimonials. And here are just a few things parents said when we asked what they learned. I've learned how to be creative, that you can incorporate learning everywhere you look. I've learned how to turn everyday moments and tasks into learning opportunities. We hear this over and over again. So then the next strategy becomes finding the right moment for a given skill to play out through a really easy activity. And we actually have a process we use for mapping skills onto just right moments. So first, we lay out all the moments. We actually have a list of daily moments that we share with each new writer that we bring on. This is a living document. We are constantly updating it with new moments, things we hear from parents and partners. We include big moments like waking up and bedtime, brushing teeth, getting dressed, and mealtime. And we also include micro moments, all the little moments and actions that exist within those larger moments. For example, we look at everything that's involved in brushing your teeth, because each one of those actions may be just right for a learning activity. Then we take a minute to reflect on the circumstances of each moment. So is a family using tools in that moment? For example, if I'm making soup, I'm likely holding a spoon or something to stir the soup with. What's happening physically in that moment? Is a family likely going to be standing, sitting, walking, reaching? Are there other people there? What's the energy like? What might parents want the energy to be like? Quiet, noisy? And are there lots of distractions? So then we take all of this and we hold it up against the skills we want families to work on with kids. We ask, which moment is easiest to play out the skill through an everyday activity? And this is how we end up with an activity that's perfectly matched to a daily moment. So let's play it out. Let's say I wanted families to work on recognizing and naming numerals over the summer. So before I write an activity around that skill, I'd run through a list of all the everyday moments when families are going to encounter numbers, right? They're going to see numbers when they drive or ride the bus. They're going to see them on road signs, speed limit signs, license plates, or mailboxes. They're going to see them on page numbers as they read bedtime books, or on the bottom of shoes and on tags as they get dressed or sort laundry, or on the remote as they watch a show, on aisle signs as they shop, on letters as they get the mail. Now, think about everything else that's going on in that moment. What are the other distractions? Which moment will be the easiest? So here, I might choose the car or bus. It's a time when kids are a captive audience. It's often a time when there are less distractions. So for recognizing numerals, I might suggest an activity where the child calls out the numbers they see on the speed limit sign. Now, let's say I wanted families to work on building number sense and helping kids understand the meaning behind the numbers they count. I know in order to really build that concept, I need kids counting concrete things, right? Like some sort of everyday object or something physical that they can feel in their body, like a hop or a clap. So I'd look for a moment in the day where there's a repeated action, like counting steps while walking from the front door to the car, or having the child count as a parent stirs something on the stove, right? Counting each stir. Or a moment when a child is encountering concrete objects, like pieces of laundry as a parent folds laundry, or toys as everyone cleans up. These are the things that are already happening. So layering on that little bit of extra learning feels doable and repeatable. And you know your family's best, so you are going to be able to spot these moments. Here are some of the daily learning moments that families have been mentioning. I like activities that include the grocery store because it feels like we are always there. It's fun to make a game out of it. Here's another one that I love. I used to love quiet time in my car. I used to tell my kids to just be quiet, but I learned that the car is the best time to ask questions. So you've chosen your skills and you've mapped them onto the moment so they're doable and repeatable. Here are some other things you can do to inspire action, to really encourage families to do the activities you're sharing with them. You ready? All right. The first is to let parents know why it's important. Tell them what the skill is and why it matters, and be totally explicit, right? Like when you do X, your child learns or builds Y. Y is important because, for example, when you ask questions as you read books, that's your X, your child builds comprehension skills, that's your Y. Comprehension skills, repeating your why again, help kids understand stories. Totally explicit, totally straightforward. And we do this because all parents want the best for their children. All parents want to do everything they can to help their children learn and thrive. Sharing why a skill is important and how it helps their child motivates a parent to do it. Parents also tell us that they aren't clear on which skills to focus on when it comes to school readiness. And knowing is empowering. It allows them to take action. Recently, a parent shared, having no prior experience with children or education, but a deep desire to set my child up for success, it is so great to get an idea of what is developmentally appropriate for this age, as well as what we should be working towards. So the next thing you can look for is secondary gains. This is something additional that families get out of the activity. So when you suggest a learning activity that also makes things easier for parents, that is a huge win. As a mother, I went through a phase where getting my kids out the door in the morning felt like something I might not survive. And the moment that always seemed to break me was when my son went to grab his socks, because I just knew there was going to be this 99% chance that he was going to put on a sock, pause for a moment, and then erupt into tears because it didn't feel right, or because it wasn't the yellow sock and he loved the yellow sock best of all, or because one of the socks was longer than the other sock and I must have accidentally handed him one of his sister's socks. And speaking of his sister's socks, why is it that they have so many socks that fit just right and he has only 1 or 2 pairs that work and we can't ever find them, right? And then one morning in desperation, I added some math into that terrible, terrible moment. Now, let me be clear. I did not think to myself, oh, this is a terrible moment. Let me add in some math to make it better. I made a desperate attempt to distract him from fixating on his socks. I said, sock time. Let's see if you can get your socks on before I count to 15. Ready, set, go. And I could not believe it. He slid those socks on in the speed of light and did not say a word about how they felt on his feet. So I started counting all the time, right? I was like, let's see if you can pick up the toys before I count to 50. Ooh, let's see if you can give me a back rub for 150 seconds. Ready, set, go. I was doing rote counting with him. I was building his math skills. But what kept me going back to that counting well was that it was making my life easier. Now, you'd think that this would be a rare occurrence, but we hear from parents all the time that they did one of our learning activities and it helped in another way too. So look for learning moments where a parent might experience that amazing secondary gain. And social and emotional skills, executive function skills are great for that. Recently, a parent told us the deep breathing technique when he is upset helped him as well as his mother and I with patience. Thank you. Another parent said, I loved the superhero chant. My daughter tends to give up on difficult tasks, and putting super before her name has actually made a big difference in her persistence. So the last thing I'll mention to look out for is that kids can be huge motivators when it comes to parents repeating a learning activity again and again. If kids love doing it, they are going to champion for it to happen over and over. We want kids experiencing joyful times with family. We want them having adventures and playing. We want them having fun while they learn. And when an activity is fun, they are going to request it. They're going to say, please, can we do that again? Please, 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 please. And this can be a huge parental motivator. I'll read a couple of parent testimonials about that. I learned how to allow my child to learn in ways that are fun for her. It makes her want to learn more every day. I learned the value of dialoguing with my son. Before, I was always busy with everyday things. Today, my son comes close to me, asking me, how was my day? And then me to him, and I stop what I'm doing. I'll talk to him. Amazing. Today, my son is more calm. And in all of this, always remember to keep your parents and students in mind. You have the advantage of knowing them, of knowing their circumstances and their routines. You know what your students love and get excited about. And that is information that is going to allow you to choose essential skills, perfect moments, and exciting activities. And now I'm gonna hand it over to Fran, who's going to walk you through how to pull it all together and get these activities into the hands of the families you serve.
Thank you so much, Rebecca, and thank you for all for being here. I'm Fran. As Rebecca mentioned earlier, I'm both a curriculum specialist and the content manager for Ready for K. This means I spend my days creating activities and messages that bring easy-to-do learning and engagement activities into the lives of the families we serve. As the content manager, I am the information organizer. It doesn't matter how great an idea is, if people can't access it, then it can't get used. So I'm here today to show you a few ways that you can present information and activities to your families in ways that feel easy to access, highly doable, and promotes feelings of confidence in parents, that I got this feeling. Rebecca walked you through the importance of less is more and only picking the 5 to 7 most important skills you want your families to work on over the summer. She explained the benefits of mapping skills onto existing routines or moments. She keyed into the motivating factor of sharing why a skill is important to families. Now we take all of that and make the information easy to share. Ready for K uses texting and evidence-based weekly fact tip growth model to share information. As educators, you need to be able to deliver the information for summer learning under a variety of circumstances. We have heard a range of stories from partners. Some will have multiple touch points with families during the summer, and others just one. The important part is that you can get the information you need to families in a way that doesn't overwhelm. The examples that I'm about to share can all be crafted ahead of time and shared all at once or throughout the summer. All are created in the highly accessible Google Sheets. They can be emailed to families, printed and handed out, or saved as a PDF to attach to a text message. Speaking of, if you happen to be a Ready for K trauma-informed partner, we could attach and send it for you. In this first example, we have the Choose It and Check It Summer Learning Calendar. It was inspired by my experience teaching kindergarten in the South Bronx. I was required to assign my students homework nightly. More of my families were able to complete the homework when the activities were simple, fun, easy to do, and laid out in a well-organized way. I even had parents share they were having fun and enjoying doing the homework. I created the calendar right in Google Sheets using a table and inserting the graphic square. It's a great way to offer families in-the-moment activities based around the skills that you have chosen to focus on. In this calendar, you can see that I filled out a few examples of activities that would support families of students in first or second grade. These specific examples focus on the key skills of reading comprehension and fluency. Important to note, even though the calendar says July at the top, you'll notice there are no dates. This is on purpose. It gives parents the freedom to choose the one thing that works best for them on any given day. It's also super easy to access. One page that can be handed out or sent to families and posted in their kitchen. All the activities are mapped onto an existing routine or moment as noted at the top of each square. Let's look closer at one of the activities. In this case, it's while a parent is making a meal. There is a why. Reading out loud helps kids become strong readers. The easy activity follows below. As you prepare a meal, invite your child to read to you. Remind them to pause at each period. This is highly doable for families. In fact, this was the scene in my kitchen a few nights ago while I was once again frantically trying to get dinner on the table before 8 p.m. This calendar has what I call the thrill of the checkbox. As families see the number of checks grow, they know they're helping their child learn and grow too. Parents feel capable and confident. They have the "I got this" feeling. Every parent likes to feel this way. You might even decide to have parents take a photo of a completed calendar and send it in so you can cheer them on during the summer. The Choose It and Check It calendar is more of a family experience. Kids get a kick out of checking things off too. Depending on age, they might even be able to select and read the activity themselves. This next example, Make Summer Learning a Routine, is much more parent-focused. It can still be used for all ages, though. This example is geared toward the preschool ages. It takes the approach of explaining why doing learning activities in general is important at the top. It leads to learning, growth, and kids being ready for the next school year. It focuses on a routine roundup with simple activities offered for parents or caregivers to do multiple times. Each one of these sheets is good for about 2 weeks before you would want to offer families a new one with new activities and or new routines to map them onto. Remember earlier, Rebecca noted that we want to create activities that are highly repeatable. This is a great method to support that idea. Take a look at this example. The daily routine is bath time. The activity focuses on building language with position words and listening to directions. It's simple, fun, and highly repeatable. Every time a parent gives their child a bath, they can play some version of this. This option is super flexible for teachers too. They can choose how many daily routines to map onto and what skills to focus on. There is a little more room to offer an activity description as well. I love how this method creates so many "I can do that" moments for parents, which translates directly to the "I got this" feeling. This last example is awesome for 3rd and 4th graders. This one is game-based, student-focused, and driven. It is high on the secondary gain scale, as just the act of playing it promotes executive functioning skills in kids like time management and organization. How it works. Families are given brain bingo cards and chips. The chips can be simple squares that kids cut out, stickers, or stamps. Parents get a welcome letter letting them know why having their child complete these activities is important for learning. It should explain the activity too. Students get a new brain bingo card each week. It's filled with learning activities that build the skills you choose to focus on. When the activities require parental involvement, they are mapped onto a routine. Students complete activities either by doing it with or sharing what they completed with their parents. For each activity they finish, the parent gives them a chip to place on the card. The goal is to fill a card a week. Teachers, it's important to note that you can repeat activities on these cards. In the math, we have one game played with both addition and subtraction. Reading for 20 minutes is repeated with a new location and question to answer. Social emotional skills are included in the do, help, connect, and play categories. Since this is student-facing, you can also reference activities or things you have done over the past year in your classroom in an Explore category. Parents will love this as they look for fun ways to keep their kids occupied over the summer now that most usual options are not necessarily available. This follows the formula, remember when we learned about X in the class? You can try Y at home. In an example from my 3rd grade twins classroom, remember when we learned about Rube Goldberg machines? You can build one at home using found objects. Share it with a parent or sibling after dinner. I hope these 3 methods have given you some inspiration on how you might support your students and their families in the quest to prevent summer slide. I'm turning it back over to Rebecca to wrap it up for us.
Thank you, Fran. We're going to open things up for questions momentarily, but we first wanted to recap our key takeaways. So when it comes to summer learning, 1, less is more. Judiciously choose your learning goals. Look for 5 to 7 skills to really focus on over the summer. Identify the big skills. What is most important? And look through the lens of parents as teachers. What are parents best positioned to enforce at home? And this may change some of your goals. 2, map learning onto the moment. Look out for that just right everyday moment for a skill to play out through an activity or an interaction. 3, introduce motivators. 3 things you can look for these additional motivators are, does the skill have a motivating why? Have you let families know why they should do it? Does it offer secondary gain? For example, a parent might say, I did this, my kid learned, and it made getting out the door easier. Or I did this and my child was more calm, or and my kid is more responsible. And the third one is, does it excite the child? Will kids drive participation and continuation? Will they say, let's do it again? We use these strategies because they work. They reframe how families see their day. They create new habits around learning. Everyday moments become learning moments. And when kids are learning every day over the summer, they are going to hang on to those core skills you taught them over the year. Before we open it up to questions, we want to take a moment to let you know about the grant program we've recently made available. Right? We recognize that this is a particularly important time to activate parents at home learning as educational partners. So we've worked hard to come up with the most generous equity-based grant program we could, because we want as many families as possible to have the support they need. If you'd like to talk with us about your organization's needs for at-home learning support, we encourage you to complete the online application so we can chat more about it. It only takes a few minutes, and a member of our team will follow up with you to answer all of your questions. And we can get your families enrolled quickly through our SIS integration, and we have the messages reaching and supporting your families literally within a week. So take us up on the offer. I know we've shared a lot of information with you today. As I mentioned, this webinar will be posted, and Fran, the amazing Fran, organized the key talking points into a bit of like a reflection sheet for you, and we will be sending that to all of you later in the week so that you can kind of walk through the process that we detailed today. Our colleague Mary is on the line, and she's going to join the conversation to share your questions with us now.
Thank you, both Rebecca and Fran, and to everybody who's joining us. One of the most common questions that I'm seeing come through is they'd like to know about accessing the webinar and the slides. And we know that some of the examples had a lot of fine print. So we will be sharing those so you can download them, print them out, and then they will be much easier to see, than especially if you're looking on a smaller screen. We will be sending out an email to everybody who registered for the webinar later this week. We will also be sharing, as Rebecca mentioned, on our social media streams, and we've recently launched a blog, and we will be posting it there as well. And Rebecca wrote a beautiful story. Actually, Rebecca and Fran wrote a beautiful story about the journey to creating our trauma-informed program. So I recommend people check that out just because it's wonderful. So one of the questions that I had was about facilitating the conversation. One of the participants said that they have colleagues as well as people that they know in other educational institutions that they'd like to facilitate a conversation about creating content. Rebecca, is that something that you can respond to? How can people bring their colleagues together to create the resources?
Oh, I love that question. You know, this is interesting because we co-create resources in a lot of our custom programs. So we will meet with a community, we will bring key stakeholders together, and we talk about the needs and we talk about the strengths and the strategies we can use to bring those two things together. So I would recommend making sure, so yes, co-creating resources is the way to go. It is an amazing experience, and it also allows you to bring lots of perspectives to the table. And I would first recommend that you choose key stakeholders. So who's going to bring the different perspectives? Who's going to bring the parent perspective? Who's going to bring the, you know, the early education perspective versus the elementary perspective? You might want to get into the neighborhood level. If you're serving a really diverse populations from different neighborhoods, try to make sure that you have representation at that table, because when you're mapping activities onto people's experiences, you really want to make sure you are accurately representing their lived experiences and reflecting the routines that they are having in their daily lives. You know, you might happen to know that your population works late, that the majority of your parents aren't putting their kids to bed. So you would leave bedtime out of the equation probably entirely and not be recommending parenting activities around that time. So bringing people to the table who really know the lives of families. And then I would recommend creating like a protocol of guiding questions. And when we do that, we generally try to definitely get at the strengths. So like, what are our families really well positioned to enforce at home? What are the skills we most want them to teach? And what are the activities that are really going to bring those skills to life in easy, manageable ways for families? Sometimes it helps if parents are at the table to have them reflect on a parenting win. Like, what's a learning moment that you felt really good about? Because one of the exciting things you discover is your parents have tons of strategies. You're probably really aware of the strategies your teachers are using, but your parents are probably employing a whole new set of strategies. And when parents are involved in content co-creating, like, you have this guarantee that is really reflecting their lives, and you know it's going to be strength-based because you're hearing directly from them. We find that when parents are involved in that process, they're a lot more invested in the learning and in like the whole community experiencing what they created. So they can become huge champions when going out into the community and encouraging other families to participate. I know I
Thank you.
very long-winded answer.
I'm sure there's a lot in there that people are jotting down. As we mentioned earlier, the recording will be shared, so you can come back and re-listen to everything that Rebecca just shared with us. Another question that we've been asked is people would like to know a little bit more about the grant itself. And Rebecca, would you like me to take that for you?
That is a logistical question. My content break.
So I'm gonna go back to the Summer and Beyond grant. Through June 15th for accepting applications, one of our team members will get back to you within 1 or 2 business days. Filling out the application gives us the information we need in order to tell you what the grant amount would be, because it is an equity-based grant, needs-based. So I encourage anybody who is thinking about providing Ready for K-tier families to go ahead and fill out the application, and then we can put you in contact directly with a member of the team who can tell you a little bit more about the details. And it does apply to all 3 of our programs. That's the whole child-based core program, the trauma-informed program, and personalized learning. So if you do have any questions, you can always send them to info@readyfork.com as well. And I think we have time for just one more question. And so one of the things that we heard was an interest in what you would recommend for organizations that are not going to be seeing their families between now and then. What's a good way to get resources into their hands? And
yep. We're hearing a lot of different strategies used by our partners. So if you have one shot at it, I would recommend the strategy that, and Fran, we will share this with everyone, but that page where it takes you through the day and just recommends activities at each point in the day. Because if you're only going to be able to reach them once, you kind of want to lay out an array of opportunities and really frame those within the day. I would use whatever communication mode you are finding most successful right now. If that's email, we have communities, actually huge cities, going door to door and dropping packets off on families' doorsteps, because we know, of course, that there are huge gaps in access to technology. We can also work together to send them text messages 3 times a week. And through our text messages with Trauma Informed, we actually you have the opportunity to link to your learning resources and your critical community resources like food and housing assistance. So we have a lot of partners who are using that messaging stream to get resources into families' hands, both supplemental educational resources and also needs-based resources.
Well, thank you everybody for joining us today. We've gone a couple of minutes long. We had some wonderful questions. We really appreciate the time that you've all taken to join us today. If you do have any final questions, please do enter them into the Q&A box. Those are saved, and we make a point of getting back to everybody who wrote a question to make sure that they get an answer. And we often use those to create a series of FAQs that we then post along with the webinar for anybody who comes back and watches the recording. So I hope you will take a moment to post your questions. We don't have any more time to answer them live, but we do want to answer your questions.
Oh, I just thought of something, Mary. One thing I want to add is earlier in the summer, we did a webinar on messaging parents without scaring or overwhelming them. And when you're creating these resources, it might be helpful to watch that, because we talk a lot about like leveling your messages so they're coming in at a reading level that is easy to access, and about sort of writing from a strength-based, and that gets down to the kind of level of word choice and phrasing. So that might also be a really helpful resource for you as you're building out your summer learning activities. And that's online. Yeah, free for everyone.
Yep, absolutely. So thank you to everybody who joined us. I'm gonna hang out here a little longer so that people do have an opportunity to ask their questions. You can always email us at info@readyfork.com. We do make our very best effort to get back to everybody quickly. And we appreciate your time today. And Rebecca and Fran, I just want to share that I'm seeing a lot of really lovely messages to both of you for the content that you've shared.
Thank you very much. It was such a pleasure. And we really feel so honored that you chose to spend your time with us today. So thank you all.
Yes, thank you so very much for your time and attention today.